What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Kommander MTG YouTube channel. I'm your host, Jason Komm, and today we have another Kommander Spotlight. This time we have the partner pairing of Vial Smasher Thrasios and Thrasios Triton Hero. This is my favorite deck and has been for years. Why? Because I love casting huge X spells, dealing a ton of damage, making deals, and rolling dice. The random element of Vial Smasher adds so much life to the table that it's hard to match with most commanders. After casting an X spell for 20 mana, the whole table will be on edge to see where that damage goes, and when the dust settles, hearts will be broken, faces smashed, and shattered vials all over the floor. This deck is so fun to play against that my friends cannot wait to pilot it themselves. If you like the idea of casting huge spells and dealing loads of damage, this deck is for you. Let's get into it. Now, this deck is focused around Vial Smasher, where the first spell you cast each turn deals damage equal to its converted mana cost to an opponent at random. I usually just give each player a number or two on a d6 and roll for it. This is an amazing ability because it gives each of our cards like Cultivate or Fact or Fiction the ability to also deal damage. This damage may seem small the first few turns, but trust me, a well-positioned X spell and you can wipe out the entire table. Our partner commander Thrasios Triton Hero gives us access to all the Simic staples, while also providing a great mana sink to draw more cards or play more lands. This deck is extremely ramp heavy because it wants to cast spells with CMC 10+. There's an absolute killer combo I'll go over later in this video with Thrasios to give you so much consistent card draw and ramp your opponents won't be able to keep up. The goal of this deck is to ramp fast and hard. Get Vial Smasher out and start piling on the damage. Use Thrasios to keep your hand full and hitting land drops, then finish off everyone with big X spells and win the game. Let's start off with a classic. Treasure Cruise is an 8-mana sorcery with Delve that lets you reduce the cost by 1 for each card you exile from your graveyard, and by doing so you can draw 3 cards. Now, the dream is to delve away 7 cards and cast Treasure Cruise for 1 blue mana, drawing 3 cards, and with Vial Smasher out, dealing 8 damage to an opponent at random. 1 mana to draw 3 cards and deal 8 damage is pretty darn good, but often I find myself casting this spell for 3 mana, which in my book is still a great deal. A great way to build Vial Smasher out is to play a lot of these cost reducible cards. Vial Smasher will still deal damage equal to the CMC, but the cost you pay for it doesn't have to equal that amount. Another example of this is Curtain's Call, a 6-mana instant with Undaunted, where you can cast it for 1 mana less for each opponent you have. Most of the time you'll be casting this for 3 mana to destroy 2 creatures. As long as Vial Smasher is out, you'll also deal 6 damage at random. Just like Treasure Cruise, you can take advantage of the cost reduction ability to crank out high amounts of damage, but in order for these cards to be effective, certain conditions have to be met, which also makes them a little risky to run. Now, this next card is an absolute amazing combo alongside Thrasios. Seedborn Muse is a 5-mana 2/4 that has untap all permanents you control during each other player's untap step. Basically, each turn you'll be able to activate Thrasios' ability to scry 1, then reveal the top card of your library. If it's land, put it into play tapped, otherwise draw a card. When these 2 cards get in play at the same time, your opponents don't have long before you can accumulate so much mana and card draw to just win. Seedborn Muse also allows us the ability to cast more instants on each of our opponent's turns. That way we can trigger Vial Smasher more and keep the damage pumping. Now, the next card is for when things aren't going to plan. You need to hit the reset button. Volcanic Vision is a 7-mana sorcery that has return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. It then deals damage equal to that card's converted mana cost to each creature your opponents control. Then you exile Volcanic Vision. This card is absolutely amazing in this deck. First off, it gets you an instant or sorcery back to your hand, say Curtain's Call. You then deal 6 damage to each creature your opponents control, which will clear most boards. And on top of that, you'll deal 7 damage at random to an opponent thanks to Vial Smasher. Now you can cast your Curtain's Call at a reduced price later on and continue to crank out damage with Vial Smasher at a reduced cost. With all the heavy hitters in this deck, you'll easily be able to trigger this card for loads of damage and give you consistent one-sided board wipe. Following that same vein of getting instants and sorceries back from the graveyard to play again, we have Kess Distant Mage. This 4-mana 3/4 with flying has, during each of your turns, you may cast an instant or sorcery spell from your graveyard. If a spell cast this way would be put into your graveyard, exile it instead. Hello, would you like another Fact or Fiction, or how about a Mana Geyser or a Cultivate? This card enables us to expand our hand to our graveyard and get so much more value and card advantage, all while dealing extra damage to our opponents from Vial Smasher. On top of that, she's a great blocker, which I desperately need to keep the Callie in my playgroup at bay. Next up is Chandra's Incinerator, a 5-mana 6/6 trampler with this spell costs X less to cast, where X is the total amount of non-combat damage dealt to your opponents this turn. It also has, whenever a source you control deals non-combat damage to an opponent, it also deals that much damage to target creature or planeswalker that player controls. Not only does this card give us the option to cast it at a reduced price, but it also comes in with a threatening 6/6 body with trample, and on top of that, it lets us turn Vial Smasher's ability to deal non-combat damage into steady removal each turn. With this card in play, it provides a great blocker and consistent way to keep our opponents in check. Now we start getting into the spicy cards in this deck. The first being Mind's Dilation, a 7-mana enchantment that has whenever an opponent casts his or her first spell each turn, that player exiles the top card of his or her library. If it's a non-land card, you may cast it without paying its mana cost. The reason this card is so good with Vial Smasher is that Vial Smasher triggers on the first spell cast each turn, meaning when Mind's Dilation triggers on an opponent's turn and it exiles a playable card for us, it will also trigger Vial Smasher's ability, dealing damage to an opponent at random. If all 4 players are still in play, that means after resolving Mind's Dilation, you will likely get 3 triggers. The ability to probably play 2 of those 3 cards and trigger Vial Smasher 2 more times in a turn rotation. You can absolutely whiff and get all lands, or you can score big and cast some pretty nasty things from your opponent's library for free. It's high risk, high reward, but I absolutely love it and can't wait to resolve this card each game. Next up is one of my favorite finishers for this deck, Jaya's Immolating Inferno, a 2-red X spell legendary sorcery that deals X damage to each of up to 3 targets. In order to cast this card, you need a legendary creature or planeswalker in play, but by the end of the game, this deck will have likely racked up 20 lands or more, and you can cast a spell where X is equal to 20 fairly easily. I absolutely love this card because it doesn't cost a lot of money, it can target all 3 opponents, and the more mana we put into X, the bigger Vial Smasher's damage will be. Such a fun card and great way to end a game. Next up is an absolutely nasty card that you should try to play as soon as possible. Wound Reflection is a 6-mana enchantment that has, at the beginning of each end step, each opponent loses life equal to the life they lost this turn. With Vial Smasher in play, this essentially reads, Vial Smasher deals double damage each turn. Pair this card with Mind's Dilation and you're in for a lot of dice rolling and damage dealing, or simply pair it with Jaya's Immolating Inferno to take out the whole table. The real beauty of this card is that each opponent loses life equal to the life they lost this turn, regardless if that damage comes from you. Vial Smasher excels at a 1v1 commander, and this card gets you to a 1v1 situation very quickly, if not outright winning you the game. Lastly, one of my absolute favorite cards in all of Magic, Strionic Resonator. This 2-mana artifact has pay 2 and tap it, then copy target triggered ability. You may choose new targets for the copy. You can use this to double up on Vial Smasher triggers, Mind's Dilation triggers, Wound Reflection triggers, the list goes on and on in this deck. There is nothing quite like casting a Jaya's Immolating Inferno where X is equal to 13, dealing 13 damage to each opponent, Vial Smasher dealing another 15 damage to a single opponent on top of that, then paying 2 for Strionic Resonator to copy Vial Smasher's trigger, dealing another 15 damage. This is craziness. This is why I love this card. It takes everything your deck is doing and turns it up to 11. I absolutely love it. Now keep in mind that Vial Smasher is very susceptible to being taken out via combat damage by aggro or mid-range decks while we ramp up in the early game. Also, our damage will get spread around randomly during the game, making it difficult to single out a player. However, once it becomes a 1v1 at the end, all of your Vial Smasher damage goes straight to their face. I don't think I've ever lost a 1v1 with Vial Smasher at this point. Thanks for watching my Commander Spotlight of Vial Smasher and Thrasios. Be sure to check out the deck list in the description. This is very similar to my first Vial Smasher deck, and I've upgraded it a fair bit since, but I believe it is an awesome deck to play with and play against. You will love it. Please let me know in the comments what you think about this partner pairing and the cards you run in your deck. If you haven't already, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. I absolutely love interacting with people on my channel, so feel free to drop a comment below, even just to introduce yourself. Have fun smashing those vials, my friends. My name is Jason Komm, and this is the Commander, signing off.